The vast chamber of the Galactic Concord Central Nexus hummed with the low thrum of alien machinery, its walls a mosaic of iridescent panels shifting like living skin. Ambassador Lyra Voss of the Krell Empire stood at the podium, her scaled arms crossed tightly over her chest, as the holographic display flickered to life. The summons had come abruptly, yanking representatives from a dozen worlds into this neutral void station orbiting Epsilon Eridani. Whispers of unrest rippled through the assembly, trade routes disrupted, alliances fraying, but no one dared voice the fear gnawing at them all. The humans were gone. Lyra's delegation flanked her. Jorik, her cautious advisor with his perpetual squint and ink-black robes, and Tira, the young engineer whose quick fingers twitched at her tool belt, ever ready to dissect a malfunctioning protocol. They were a tight unit, bound by the Krell's rigid hierarchy, but today even that felt fragile. The hologram stabilized, projecting the Concord's emblem, a spiraling helix of stars, before the High Arbitrator's voice boomed from hidden speakers, smooth and synthetic, devoid of any species inflection. Esteemed delegates, the Concord faces an unprecedented crisis. Humanity has withdrawn from all pacts, severed communications, and abandoned their outposts. Their fleets have vanished into uncharted sectors, leaving behind only automated beacons repeating a single directive: we walk our own path. Murmurs erupted like static across the chamber. A tentacled envoy from the Vexery Collective lashed out with a limb, knocking over a datapad, while the crystalline delegates from Zorth clicked in agitated harmony. Lyra felt a chill scale her spine. The humans had been the glue, their unpredictable ingenuity brokering deals no one else could. Without them, the power balances teetered. Jorik leaned in, his voice a low rasp. "This is madness, Ambassador. The humans can't just leave. Their tech underpins half our defenses. If they're gone, who's to stop the fringe raiders from the outer veil?" Tira nodded, her eyes darting to the hologram where a star map blinked with red voids. Human territories now dark. And their engines? We reverse-engineered the warp coils from their designs. Without maintenance protocols, our ships could fail mid-jump. Lyra silenced them with a sharp gesture, her mind racing. The Krell Empire relied on human alliances for rare minerals from the Soul Fringe. Without them, their forges would idle, armies starve for weapons. But admitting weakness here would invite predators. She stepped forward, addressing the arbitrator. "What evidence do we have this isn't a ploy? Humans are masters of deception. Perhaps they're testing our resolve." The arbitrator's projection shimmered, unperturbed. Sensors confirm, no energy signatures, no debris. Their final transmission cited irreconcilable divergences in the laws of power. "We must convene a pursuit task force. Volunteers?" The chamber fell silent, each delegate weighing the risks. Lyra's gaze swept the room, landing on the empty seat where the human envoy should have sat. A single data crystal lay abandoned there, pulsing faintly. She signaled Tira, who scooped it up discreetly, her fingers probing its interface. As the assembly dissolved into fractured debates, Lyra pulled her team into a shadowed alcove. "We can't wait for the Concord's bureaucracy. If the humans have truly walked away, they've taken their secrets with them, and left us exposed." Tira analyzed that crystal. "Jorik, reach out to our spies in soul space. We're going after them ourselves." Jorik hesitated, his squint deepening. "Alone? Against whatever drove them to this?" Lyra's scales bristled. "Not alone. But first, the Empire's survival demands it." Tira slotted the crystal into her portable scanner, and it whirred to life, projecting a faint, looping message in human standard. A silhouette of a figure striding into starlit void, words overlaying like an epitaph. "Power isn't held, it's chosen. We choose freedom." The implications hung heavy, a shadow lengthening across their path. Lyra felt the weight of it settle, not just loss but the unraveling of certainties they'd built empires upon. Outside the Nexus, their shuttle awaited, engines priming for the long haul into the unknown. The hunt had begun, but Lyra wondered if they were pursuing salvation or the end of everything. Captain Alara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's co-pilot seat, the hum of the engines vibrating through her bones as they skimmed the edge of the asteroid field. The view screen flickered with the debris-strewn void, chunks of rock tumbling lazily in the dim light of a distant star. Beside her, Jax, her wiry engineer with a perpetual grease smudge on his cheek, tapped furiously at the console, his brow furrowed in concentration. "We've got incoming," Jax muttered, his voice steady despite the tension coiling in his shoulders. "That Krell patrol's closing fast, 3 fighters armed to the teeth." Elara nodded, her jaw set. The Krell, those hulking reptilian enforcers of the Galactic Concord, had been hounding human outposts since the withdrawal. Humanity's quiet exit from the Interstellar Alliances 3 cycles ago hadn't sat well with them. No grand declarations, no wars, just a collective shrug and a retreat to the fringes. But the power vacuum? That had rippled outward, and now the Krell were testing boundaries, probing for weakness. "Evade pattern Delta," she ordered, her fingers dancing over the controls. The shuttle bucked as thrusters fired, weaving through a narrow gap between boulders the size of frigates. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing across the cabin. Jax glanced up, his eyes sharp. "They're locking weapons. We can't outrun them in this scrap heap." The shuttle shuddered under a glancing hit, sparks erupting from a panel near Elara's feet. She smelled the acrid tang of melting circuits. The challenge wasn't just the pursuit, it was the cargo in the hold, prototype drive cores, the kind that could tip the balance if they fell into Krell hands. Humanity had walked away from the Concord's wars and treaties, but not from survival. These cores were their edge, a clever fusion of human grit and forgotten tech that bent physics just enough to slip through blockades. "Divert power to shields," Elara said, her voice calm, the brave core of her pushing through the fear. "And Jax, get that decoy ready." He grinned faintly, the witty spark in his eyes flashing as he yanked a lever. "Aye, Cap, time to make 'em chase ghosts." The decoy drone ejected with a soft whoosh, mimicking their shuttle's signature as it veered toward a cluster of asteroids. On the view screen, the Krell fighters split, 2 peeling off after the fake while the third pressed on, relentless. Elara's plan was simple. Lose them in the field, deliver the cores to the hidden colony on Rigel 7. But simplicity had a way of backfiring. The pursuing fighter unleashed a barrage, plasma bolts searing past, one clipping the shuttle's wing. Alarms wailed louder, and the craft listed gravity compensators straining. "Hull breach in Bay 3, Jax reported, already suiting up." "I'll seal it." "Negative," Elara snapped, pulling the shuttle into a tight spin. "We need you here. Reroute emergency seals." He hesitated, then complied, his cautious nature warring with trust. Fingers flew across keys, and the breach hissed shut, but not before atmosphere vented, frosting the inner hull. The cold seeped in, a tangible reminder of the stakes. Lose the cores and the colony's defenses crumbled. No more slipping away from Concord patrols. It'd be subjugation or fight. Elara's mind raced, drawing on that human ingenuity the aliens whispered about in wary tones. The Krell relied on brute force, predictable vectors. Humans? They adapted. Jax, modulate the grav drive, pulse it like a heartbeat, irregular. He raised an eyebrow but punched in the commands. The shuttle lurched, its drive core whining as it stuttered output, throwing their trajectory into chaos. The fighter overshot, its sensors scrambling to lock on the erratic blip. Elara seized the moment, diving toward a massive asteroid pocked with craters. Inside the shadow of the rock, they hugged its surface, the shuttle's belly scraping stone with a grinding screech. The fighter circled once, twice, its scans probing. Elara held her breath, the tension thick as the dust cloud they stirred. Then, silence. The fighter banked away, joining its wingmates in fruitless pursuit of the decoy. Jax exhaled, slumping back. That was too close. What if they double back? They won't, Elara said, though doubt flickered in her gut. She straightened the course toward Rigel 7, the stars wheeling into view. But as the asteroid field receded, a new ping lit the console, an encrypted hail from the colony. Urgent. The Krell weren't done. They'd hit the outpost already, demanding tribute for the stolen tech humanity had rightfully reclaimed. Elara's grip tightened. Walking away had bought time, but the laws of power followed, hungry and unyielding. The real test waited ahead, and the cores in the hold suddenly felt heavier, a promise of grit against the storm. Captain Alara Voss gripped the railing of the observation deck, her knuckles whitening as the stars blurred into streaks outside the viewport. The Endeavour's engines hummed a low protest, pushing them deeper into uncharted space, away from the Galactic Concorde's iron grip. Beside her, Jax Harlan, the ship's wiry engineer, fiddled with a holographic display, his fingers dancing over schematics that glowed like fireflies in the dim light. "Fuel's holding, but these relays are finicky," he muttered, his voice carrying that familiar edge of cautious optimism. Across from them stood Dr. Lyra Kale, the xenobiologist, her sharp eyes scanning a tablet filled with data on the derelict signals they'd picked up hours ago. She was the brave one, always diving into the unknown without a second thought, while Alara preferred plans etched in durasteel. The alert chime cut through the tension like a knife. "Incoming transmission," the AI intoned, its voice neutral as ever. Alara straightened, exchanging a glance with Jax. Lyra tapped her tablet, pulling up the feed. It wasn't the Concorde's sleek probe they expected. Instead, a fractured image flickered to life. A humanoid figure, armored in something ancient and pitted, speaking in a language that the translators struggled to parse. "They're hailing from the edge of the nebula," Lyra said, her tone steady but laced with excitement. "Not Concorde tech. Primitive but functional. Could be survivors." Jax snorted, wiping sweat from his brow. "Or a trap. Remember Vega 7? We answered a distress call and nearly lost the ship to scavengers." He leaned closer to the display, tracing a power signature that pulsed erratically. Alara nodded, her mind racing through contingencies. The Concorde had branded them renegades for refusing to hand over their human-engineered warp drive, the one that bent space in ways the alien empires couldn't replicate. Now out here, every shadow could be a hunter. "Arm the defenses," she ordered, her voice calm despite the knot in her stomach. "But keep channels open. If they're human, or close, we don't turn away." The figure on the screen stabilized, resolving into a woman with weathered features and eyes like polished obsidian. "This is Commander Nia Reyes of the Exile Fleet. We've tracked your signature. You're not Concorde. Join us or they'll find you too." Her words hung heavy, promising alliance amid the void's isolation. Lyra's breath caught. Jax's hands paused mid-adjustment. Alara felt the weight of it, the first real offer since they'd fled, a chance to build something beyond survival. But trust was a luxury they couldn't afford, not with the Concorde's patrols closing in. As the Endeavour adjusted course toward the nebula's swirling gases, a faint tremor ran through the hull. Jax cursed under his breath, diving back into his console. Structural stress. That hail must have tripped a sensor. Alara's jaw tightened. The nebula's interference was already playing havoc with their shields, and now this. Lyra stepped forward, her cautious nature surfacing in the way she gripped her tablet like a shield. "We can't dock blind. Scan for hostiles first." The team huddled, voices overlapping in hurried debate, Jax advocating for a quick evasive burn, Lyra pushing for more data, Alara balancing the risks. In the end, they voted to proceed, but with drones launched ahead, tiny scouts piercing the colorful haze. Hours blurred into a tense vigil. The nebulous tendrils glowed with ionized particles, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. One drone feed crackled back. Wreckage, vast and human-made, drifting like forgotten bones. No immediate threats, but the power reading spiked unnaturally. "That's not natural decay," Jax said, his wit surfacing in a grim smile. "Someone's jury-rigging out there." Alara watched the feed, a plan forming. If the exiles were real, they could share tech, fortify against the Concorde. But if not, she pushed the thought aside, focusing on the now. The docking sequence initiated with a series of clunks and hisses. Airlocks sealed, and Alara led the way into the Exile's corridor, phaser holstered but ready. Nia Reyes waited, flanked by two guards in mismatched armor, their postures wary but not aggressive. Up close, the commander looked older than the transmission suggested, lines etched by years of running. "Welcome aboard," she said, extending a hand. Alara clasped it firmly, feeling the calluses that mirrored her own. Jax hung back, eyeing the bulkheads for weak points, while Lyra scanned discreetly with her wrist device. They moved to the command center, a cramped space alive with flickering consoles and the murmur of a skeleton crew. Maps of Concord blockades dotted the walls, red lines marking escape vectors. Nia wasted no time. The Concord's laws bind the stars, obey or perish. But humanity? We walked away and took the real power with us. She gestured to a central holodeble, where a simulation played out, human ingenuity twisting alien tech into weapons that outmatched Imperial fleets. Elara leaned in, intrigued despite herself. Jax whistled low. Clever. But how'd you evade their quantum trackers? The answer came in a demonstration, a device that scrambled signatures born from scavenged parts and sheer grit. Lyra's eyes lit up, already dissecting its components mentally. But as Nia explained, an alarm blared. Patrol inbound. The room erupted into motion. Elara's team sprang into action, Jax patching their systems to the Exile's grid, Lyra coordinating sensor sweeps. The Concorde ship loomed on screens, its weapons charging. In the chaos, Elara realized the Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the stellar Nomadus engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the asteroid field's chaotic dance, jagged rocks tumbling in lazy orbits around the gas giant's pull. Her crew, a tight-knit trio of humans who'd seen too many alien treaties sour, waited for her orders. Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual grease streak on his cheek, tapped at his console, his fingers dancing over holographic readouts. Beside him, Lena, the sharp-eyed navigator whose caution had saved them from more than one ambush, scanned the debris field with narrowed eyes. "We've got incoming," Lena said, her voice steady but laced with the edge of someone who'd bet on worse odds before. The sensor ping lit up the screen. A swarm of automated drones, sleek and alien-designed, fanning out from the shadow of a larger boulder. They weren't the welcoming committee. These were the Galactic Concorde's enforcers, programmed to secure any unauthorized mining ops in the Outer Rim. Elara had heard the stories, ships vanishing, crews vanishing with them, all in the name of resource equity. Jax snorted, leaning back. "Equity my ass. They're just mad we found the iridium vein first. Those xenobots can't tell a rock from a relic without blowing it up." His wit cut through the tension, but his hands never stopped moving, rerouting power to the shields. Elara appreciated that about him, bravado masking the grit that kept them alive. The first drone locked on, its thrusters flaring blue as it accelerated. Elara's mind raced through the options. Blast them? The Nomad could handle a few, but the field was thick. One wrong shot could trigger a cascade of collisions. Evade? Lena's maps showed no clear path. The gas giant's gravity well tugged at them like an insistent hand. "Helm, evasive pattern delta," she commanded, her tone calm, the bravery she'd honed on frontier runs surfacing now. The ship lurched, engines whining as they dodged the initial volley of plasma bursts. But the drones adapted, their AI swarming in a coordinated net, closing the gap. One clipped the Nomad's flank, sending sparks across the engineering panel. Jax cursed, slamming a fist on the override. "Shields at 60%. If we don't shake him, we're driftwood." Lena's fingers flew over her controls, plotting a desperate vector toward the field's densest cluster. "Captain, if we thread the needles, use the rocks as cover, we might lose them. But it's tight. One glitch and we're paced." Elara nodded, the weight of command settling like dust on her shoulders. Humanity had walked away from the Concorde's smothering laws months ago, taking their ingenuity and their ships with them. No more begging for scraps. Out here they carved their own path. But this vein of iridium wasn't just ore, it was the key to upgrading their fleet, to turning whispers of independence into a roar. Lose it and they'd be hunted scraps themselves. "Do it," she said. The Nomad dove into the maelstrom, rocks whistling past the hull like vengeful spirits. Drones followed, their formations fracturing against the unpredictable debris. Jax jury-rigged a decoy flare, launching it into the fray, a burst of false signals that drew half the swarm away. Lena hooped as the ship slipped through a gap barely wider than their wingspan, the asteroid's craggy surface looming large on the screen. Yet as they emerged on the far side, a new alert blared. The mother ship, a hulking Concorde cruiser, had dropped out of warp, its silhouette blotting the stars. The drones were the bait, This was the hook. Ilara's jaw tightened. The plan to mine and slip away had backfired spectacularly. Now, with the iridium just beyond the next tumble of rocks, the real stakes crystallized. Fight for their future or watch it shatter against alien might. "Arm the railguns," she ordered, her voice ablade. Jax grinned, the fire in his eyes matching hers. "About time we showed what humans do best." The Nomad banked hard, charging toward the cruiser with the reckless abandon of those who'd nothing left to lose. Plasma fire lit the void, and in that moment, Ilara felt the camaraderie surge, 3 souls against the galaxy, betting everything on wit and will. But as the cruiser's weapons powered up, she knew the cost would be high. One wrong move and their walkaway became a grave. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's command chair, the hum of the engines vibrating through her bones as they skimmed the edge of the nebula's glowing tendrils. The view screen ahead swirled with purples and electric blues, a cosmic storm that had swallowed 3 scout vessels in the last cycle. Beside her, Dr. Cale Thorne, the xenobiologist with his perpetual squint and ink-stained fingers, tapped at a console, his face illuminated by the data streams. "The readings are stabilizing," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "But if we push deeper, those plasma flares could fry our shields in seconds." Across from them sat Lyra, the avian delegate from the Coalition's fringe worlds, her feathers ruffled in agitation, talons clicking against the floor. She had insisted on joining this run, her sharp eyes fixed on the nebula like it owed her answers. "Your human probes failed last time," she said, voice a melodic trill edged with doubt. "Why risk the ship now? The Council demands proof of safe passage, not more graves." Ilara didn't look away from the screen. Her crew, handpicked for this mess, knew better than to second-guess mid-flight. The nebula wasn't just a hazard, it was the gateway to unclaimed sectors rich with rare isotopes, the kind that could tip the balance in the Coalition's endless resource wars. Humanity's withdrawal from the core alliances had left a vacuum, and now every faction scrambled to fill it, dragging old pacts into new fires. But Ilara's mission was simple: chart a path through, secure the claim, and remind the stars that humans didn't run, they recalculated. A sudden jolt rocked the shuttle, alarms blaring as a flare erupted from the nebula's heart, lancing toward them like a spear of light. Ilara's hands flew to the controls, banking hard left. The ship groaned, inertial dampeners straining. "Cale, reroute power to forward shields," she barked, sweat beading on her forehead. He was already moving, fingers blurring over the panel. "Done, 90% transfer. But it'll leave us blind on sensors for 30 seconds. Lyra braced against the bulkhead, her wings half unfurled. "This is madness. Pull back." "Not an option." Ilara's voice was steel. The flare missed by meters, dissipating in a shower of sparks against the reinforced hull. But the nebula responded, another pulse building, larger this time, drawing energy from the ionized clouds like a living beast. Their initial plan, slow probes to map weak points, had backfired spectacularly when the first one ignited a chain reaction, sealing the entry tighter than a vault. Cale's console pinged. "Got a window, narrow but viable. Coordinates locked. It'll take precision flying, Captain." Ilara nodded, jaw set. Precision was her trait, forged in the asteroid belts of Sol's outer rims. She eased the throttle, threading the shuttle into the gap. The walls of plasma closed in, heat building despite the shields. Lyra's breathing quickened, a soft whistle through her beak. "If we survive this, your people will own half the galaxy. But at what cost?" The question hung as the shuttle shuddered through the breach, emerging into a calmer pocket where stars twinkled mockingly serene. Ilara exhaled, wiping her brow. "The cost of standing still," she replied. But even as the sensors cleared, a new alert flashed. Anomalous readings ahead, not natural flares but something mechanical, drifting wreckage marked with rival sigils. The path was open, but the real challenge had just begun. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the Odysseus engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the debris field ahead, a graveyard of shattered hulls from the Krell Armada, their once mighty dreadnoughts reduced to twisted metal by the humans' parting gift. She'd seen the reports. When Earth pulled out of the Galactic Concord 6 months ago, they'd sabotaged the shared fusion grids, leaving the alien fleets powerless. No grand declaration, just a quiet walk away, and the lights went out across the stars. Beside her, Lieutenant Kai Rin, the wiry engineer with a perpetual grease smudge on his cheek, tapped at his console. Scans show the field's thinning cap. But there's a spike, residual energy signatures. Could be a survivor pod or a trap. Elara nodded, her jaw set. Brave didn't mean reckless. She'd learned that hauling cargo through pirate lanes back home. Helm, ease us in. Keep shields at full. We need that data core from the Vanguard wreck. Proof of what the Concord did to our colonies before we left. The bridge crew, only 4 of them now after the layoffs, moved with quiet efficiency. Mira, the cautious navigator from the old lunar outposts, plotted a serpentine course through the hulks. Gritty determination etched her face. She'd lost family to the Concord's blockades. And then there was Zorak, the lone alien holdout, a hulking Thraxian with scales like burnished copper, who paced at the rear. He'd defected when humans walked, muttering about honor in the void. Witty in his gravelly way, but today he was silent, eyes fixed on the drifting wreckage. As the Odyssey slipped between 2 colossal fragments, a low groan echoed through the hull. Alarms blared, structural stress. Incoming debris. Mira shouted, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Elara's hands flew to the controls. Evasive. Kai, reroute power to thrusters. The ship bucked, a jagged spar whipping past the viewport close enough to scrape paint. Kai cursed under his breath, fingers dancing over panels. Diverting now, hold on. Zorak braced against the bulkhead, his claws digging into the metal. This is madness, human. The Concord's remnants hunt for any who carry your secrets. Exactly why we grab it and go, Elara snapped, steering through the chaos. The plan was simple. Dock with the Vanguard, extract the core logging the Concord's war crimes against human outposts, then vanish into the outer rim. But as they neared the target wreck, a shadow detached from the gloom. A sleek interceptor, Concord markings faded but weapons hot. They're locking on. Mira yelled. Elara's mind raced. Direct fight? No, the Odyssey was a scout, not a warship. Run. Through the field they'd be sitting ducks. Kai, can we spoof their sensors? Make us look like debris? He grinned, that spark of ingenuity lighting his face. On it. Rerouting emissions to mimic a cooling hull. Give me 30 seconds. The interceptor fired a warning shot, lancing energy that lit the bridge in stark blue. The ship shuddered but held. Zorak growled, drawing his sidearm, a human-issue plasma rifle he'd never quite mastered. If this fails, I will ram them myself. Patience, Elara said, though her pulse thundered. The ruse worked. The enemy vessel veered off, scanning empties. They closed on the Vanguard, mag clamps engaging with a solid thunk. Inside the wreck, zero-G corridors stretched like frozen veins. Elara led the away team, Kai and Zorak, harnesses clipping them to guide rails. Air recyclers hummed faintly, a ghost of life. Floating data slates bobbed in the dim emergency lights, each one a silent accusation against the Concord's lies. They reached the core chamber, a vault door half ajar from the explosion. Kai pried it open, his multi-tool whining. Got it? But, look at this. The console inside was intact but etched with fresh scratches, Thraxian script. Zorak leaned in, his massive frame blocking the light. My kin. They were here first. Claimed it for the remnants. Elara's stomach twisted. The risk just doubled. If the Thrax returned the core, and their evidence would be lost. Or worse, turned against them. Extrast fast. We adapt or we die here. As Kai yanked the core free, a distant clang reverberated through the hull. Footsteps? No, backing clamps. The interceptor had circled back. Back on the Odyssey, Elara punched the engines to life. Mira, plot us out the long way. Kai, integrate that core, priority 1. Zorak slumped into his seat, the core clutched like a trophy. You humans, you walk away and the stars unravel. But this? This changes nothing. Or everything. Elara didn't reply, eyes on the pursuing blip. The debris field spat them into open space, but the chase was on. One core, one truth, and a galaxy that wouldn't forgive the humans for leaving the lights off. The cost was already mounting, fuel low, allies fracturing. But they pressed on, ingenuity their only weapon. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the console edge as the shuttle shuddered through the asteroid field's outer fringes. The viewport framed a jagged dance of rocks, each one a silent sentinel in the void. Her crew, 3 humans forged in the fires of forgotten colonies, huddled in the cramped cockpit, their faces lit by the flickering holograph of the NAV chart. "Another near miss," muttered Jax the engineer, wiping sweat from his brow. His fingers danced over the thruster controls, coaxing the old ship back on course. Brave to a fault, Jax always charged into fixes like they were puzzles meant to be cracked. But today his usual grin was absent. Lyra, the xenobiologist, leaned forward, her cautious eyes scanning the sensor readouts. "The gravitational pulls are shifting. If we don't adjust vector by the next cluster, we'll be pulverized." She adjusted her glasses, a habit from Earthside Labs long abandoned. Ilara nodded, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. "Plot the bypass. We can't afford delays, the Alliance fleet is 2 hours behind and they've got our scent." The external challenge loomed larger than the rocks. The rival Krell enforcers, their bioships weaving through the field like predators in tall grass, hunting the data core they'd stolen. One wrong move, and humanity's last leverage against the Galactic Council vanished, along with their fragile independence. The plan had been simple: slip through the Whisper Belt undetected, deliver the core to the neutral outpost. But the Krell's ambush had forced this detour, turning a ghost run into a gauntlet. Ilara's mind raced. She'd led scavenging runs on hostile worlds, but this felt personal, the stakes etched in the lines of her crew's faces. A low rumble vibrated the deck. "Incoming debris," Jax announced, slamming the yoke. The shuttle banked hard, engines whining in protest. Lyra braced against her station, her mind already dissecting alternatives. Perhaps vent plasma to mimic a Krell signature by time. "They're closing," Ilara said, watching the blips on the scope multiply. The Krell's lead ship, a hulking organic leviathan, pulsed with bioluminescent veins, its tendrils probing the field for weakness. Her hand hovered over the evasion protocols, but doubt crept in. The early feint through the inner ring had backfired, drawing them deeper into the trap. "Captain, if we hug the ecliptic plane," Lyra started, but Jax cut her off with a sharp twist of the controls. A boulder the size of a freighter loomed, filling the viewport like an onrushing doom. Ilara's pulse thrummed. "Do it." The shuttle dove, gravity yanking them into seats. Stone grazed the hull with a screech that echoed in their bones, sparks flying across the panels. Jax hooped as they cleared it, but the victory was hollow. The Krell were adapting, their formation tightening. In the respite, Ilara turned to her team. "We adapt or we end up debris. Lyra, your bioscan, any weak points in their pursuit pattern." Lyra's caution paid off. She highlighted a fluctuation in the Krell's energy wake, a vulnerability born of their organic tech's need for constant renewal. "They're regenerating shields here," Lyra said, pointing. "If we loop back and hit with a targeted EMP burst," Jax's eyes lit. "My specialty. But it'll drain our core reserves. We might limp to the outpost, nothing more." The risk hung heavy, a tangible cost. Slower escape, easier pickings for patrols. Ilara weighed, the camaraderie binding them like hull plating. Better limping free than intact in chains. "Execute." As Jax rerouted power, the shuttle arced in a daring spiral, the asteroid shadows playing across their determined faces. Tension coiled, earnest in the quiet calculations, the adventure etched in every calculated breath. The Krell loomed closer, but for the first time, a spark of human grit pierced the dark. A clever pivot, born of necessity, with the galaxy's power laws bending just a fraction toward them. Yet the field whispered warnings. One misstep, and the void claimed all. Elena gripped the railing as the shuttle bucked against the asteroid's gravitational pull, the engines whining like a beast on its last breath. Marco hunched over the console, his fingers dancing across the flickering holograph, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill in the cabin. "Come on, you stubborn hunk of junk," he muttered, voice laced with that familiar sarcasm that kept them both sane. The rock loomed outside the viewport, a jagged scar in the void, pocked with the faint glow of mineral veins they'd spotted from orbit, their last shot at fuel cells before the hyperdrive gave out for good. She glanced at him, noting the way his jaw tightened, the clever glint in his eye dimmed by exhaustion. They'd been at this for hours, ever since the initial scan revealed the asteroid's core was laced with rare thorium deposits, enough to recharge and limp back to the relay station. But the approach was a nightmare. The field's turbulence was shredding their stabilizers, and every jolt sent sparks flying from the overhead panels. Vector holding at 30 degrees, Marco announced, his tone clipped. But if we don't adjust thrust in the next 10 seconds, we'll skim too close and get pulped against that ridge. Elena nodded, her mind racing through the options they'd already burned. The backup thrusters were fried from the earlier micrometeor hit, and rerouting power from life support was a gamble that could leave them gasping in the cold. She strapped into the co-pilot's seat, pulling up the manual override. Override engaged. Punch it on my mark. The shuttle shuddered as they fired the mains, the asteroid surface rushing up like a tidal wave of stone. Marco whooped when they cleared the first outcrop, but his laugh died quick. Alarms blared, red lights painting the cabin in bloody hues. Hull breach in Bay 3. We're venting atmosphere. She cursed under her breath, unstrapping and hauling herself toward the aft hatch. The corridor beyond was a wind tunnel, air howling through the tear where a chunk of debris had punched through during the skim. Frost rimed the walls, and she could feel the bite in her lungs already. Marco's voice crackled over the intercom, patching what I can from here, but you gotta seal that fast or we're done. Kneeling by the breach, Elena yanked open the emergency kit, her gloved hands fumbling with the sealant foam. The void stared back, indifferent and endless, stars mocking their fragility. A piece of twisted metal groaned, threatening to widen the gap. She sprayed the foam in thick bursts, watching it expand and harden against the vacuum, but it wasn't enough. Pressure was dropping, and the shuttle listed, pulling them closer to the asteroid's unforgiving embrace. Almost there, she grunted, forcing another layer over the jagged edge. Her suit seals held, but the cold seeped in, numbing her fingers. Memories flickered, the Alliance Council sneers when humanity pulled out, calling them reckless for walking away from the safety of the fleet. Look at us now, she thought, ingenuity be damned if we end up as space debris. Marco's voice cut through, I've got auxiliary seals online, hold on. A hiss, then a pop, and the wind died to a whisper. The breach held, barely, foam glistening like fresh ice under the emergency lights. She staggered back to the cockpit, collapsing into her seat as Marco guided them into a stable orbit. The asteroid filled the view now, its surface a labyrinth of craters and spires. That was too close, she said, wiping her face. But we're in. Suit up, time to mine what we came for. He flashed a grin, weary but real. Aye, Captain. Let's show these rocks what human hands can do. As they cycled the airlock, the shuttle settled into a low rumble, the first step toward survival bought with sweat and seconds. But Elena couldn't shake the nagging pull in her gut. The scanners had missed something in the core, a shadow that didn't match the thorium signatures. Deeper scans would have to wait. They were committed now, boots on the regolith, picks in hand. The Alliance might have written them off, but humanity didn't quit easy. The dim hum of the auxiliary generators filled the observation deck, a relentless drone that matched the ache in Alex's temples. He leaned against the viewport, staring out at the swirling nebula that had once been a beacon of human exploration, now just a graveyard of flickering emergency lights on the derelict hulls drifting nearby. Zara paced behind him, her iridescent scales catching the red glow from the control panels, each step a soft click against the grated floor. We can't keep patching this forever, she said, her voice steady but edged with the caution that had kept her alive through a dozen council negotiations. The core's destabilizing. One more surge and the whole station fractures. Alex turned, rubbing the stubble on his jaw, his mind racing through schematics he'd memorized back when humans still ran this place. Witty comebacks felt distant now, survival demanded focus. Core stood sentinel by the door, his massive frame blocking the corridor's shadows, arms crossed over a chest scarred from battles humanity had mediated to a standstill. The big guy's silence was louder than words, brave to a fault, but even he knew brute force wouldn't bend physics. Your people built this to last, Kor rumbled finally, his deep voice echoing like gravel in a drum. Why does it fail now? Because we walked away, Alex replied, not bitter, just matter of fact. He pushed off the viewport and crossed to the central console, fingers dancing over the holographic display. The station's power grid lit up in jagged lines, red warnings pulsing like wounds. Humanity's exit from the Galactic Accord had left voids everywhere. Alliances frayed, tech unsupported, and this orbital hub, meant to bridge species, starving for the ingenuity that kept it alive. The external challenge wasn't some rival fleet. It was entropy itself, accelerated by the resource shortage that hit after the human supply lines vanished. Fuel cells depleted, redundancies failing one by one. Zara stopped pacing, her multifaceted eyes narrowing as she joined him. The early plan was solid: reroute the nebulous plasma through the secondary vents. But the backfire, those conduits melted faster than we anticipated. She gestured to the schematics, where simulated flows now showed blockages like clots in veins. Tension coiled in the air, earnest and unyielding, the kind that forged bonds or broke them. Alex nodded, feeling the weight of their small crew. Him, the last human holdout. Zara, the diplomat who'd bet her career on human principles. Kor, the warrior sworn to protect what remained. No speeches about legacy, just the grind of choices under pressure. He tapped a sequence, pulling up an old human subroutine buried in the code, something his ancestors had tucked away for emergencies like this. The hologram shifted, revealing a clever adaptation, siphoning energy not from the nebula's fury but from its subtle magnetic fields, using the station's own alloy frames as improvised conductors. It's risky, Alex admitted, his voice low. We'll lose the outer ring, evac modules only hold 3. But it stabilizes the core long enough to signal for help. Zara's scales rippled in hesitation, her cautious nature warring with the trust she'd built in him. Kor uncrossed his arms, stepping forward with a grunt of approval. Better than drifting dead. Argument flickered briefly, Zara pointing out the power fluctuations could fry the comms array mid-transmission. But under the drone of failing systems they decided. Alex initiated the reroute, short bursts of code flying from his fingertips. Sparks erupted from a nearby panel, sharp and hot, forcing Kor to shield Zara with his bulk. The deck shuddered, longer vibrations rolling through the structure like a beast awakening. Alarms blared, red lights strobing, but the grid lines on the display smoothed, inching toward green. As the surge peaked, Alex caught a glimpse through the viewport, the nebulous tendrils coiling closer, drawn by the station's desperate pull. One hull fragment, a relic from a long-forgotten docking, broke free and tumbled toward them, close enough to graze the shields with a metallic screech. Heart pounding, he locked the sequence, the hum steadying to a whisper. They weren't out yet. The signal beamed into the void, but the cost lingered in the acrid smoke curling from the vents and the faint tremor in the floor. Zara placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch cool. We adapt or we don't, she said simply. Kor nodded, eyes on the stars where help might or might not come. The observation deck fell quiet, save for the soft beep of the transmission confirming. Outside, the nebula churned on, indifferent, but inside their camaraderie held, a human spark refusing to fade entirely. Yet the outer ring's lights winked out one by one, a tangible reminder that walking away had consequences that echoed across the void. The dim glow of the emergency lights cast long shadows across the engineering bay, where Captain Elena Vasquez knelt beside the gutted console, her hands smeared with lubricant and sparks. The air hummed with the faint whine of failing stabilizers, a reminder that the Endeavor's hull was holding by threads against the void's relentless pull. Beside her, Dr. Liam Kerr wiped sweat from his brow, his cautious eyes scanning the makeshift jury rig from behind cracked spectacles. This tether's not going to hold another cycle, he muttered, voice steady but edged with the weight of their isolation. The alien artifact they'd salvaged from the derelict station, a pulsating crystal core promising unlimited energy, had backfired spectacularly, flooding the ship with erratic surges that crippled their drives and summoned a swarm of automated drones from the station's defenses. Elena didn't look up, her fingers deftly splicing wires with a tool scavenged from the medkit. Brave as ever, she pushed through the pain in her shoulder from the earlier breach, the one that had cost them the navigator. Then we make it hold. The Council's fleet is 12 hours out, if we can signal them without frying the array. Her words were clipped, action speaking louder than doubt. Across the bay, Specialist Tara Voss paced, her witty retorts silenced for once by the gravity of their gamble. The resource shortage hit hardest here. Power cells depleted, oxygen recyclers sputtering, and the drones outside probing for weak points like hungry predators. A sharp crackle erupted from the console as Elena connected the final bypass. The crystal's hum intensified, syncing unevenly with the ship's systems. Liam leaned in, his analytical mind racing. If we route the excess through the auxiliary vents, it might stabilize, but one surge and we're venting atmosphere. Tara stopped pacing, her eyes narrowing. Or we use it. Those drones run on similar harmonics. Turn their own weapon against them. The idea hung in the air, born of desperation and that human spark of adaptation. Elena nodded, sealing the panel with a decisive slap. Tension coiled tighter as the first drone latched onto the hull, its cutters screeching like nails on metal. They moved as one, Elena barking coordinates while Liam calibrated the pulse. Tara manned the manual overrides, her hands flying over controls worn smooth by use. The ship shuddered, the crystal's energy flaring blue through the viewports. Outside, the drones faltered, their formations breaking as the feedback loop Elena had improvised scrambled their signals. One peeled away, trailing sparks into the black. But victory came at a cost. The surge overloaded a secondary conduit, and alarms blared as a hull plate buckled. Air hissed out, cold and unforgiving. Elena sealed the breach with a portable foam kit, her breath ragged. Signals away. Fleet will get it. Liam checked the readouts, his caution yielding to quiet relief. But the crystal's fracturing. We can't take it with us. Tara glanced at the glowing relic, now veined with cracks. Let it die here. We've got what we came for, proof that their laws of power bend to ingenuity. The Endeavor limped forward, engines coughing back to life, but the station loomed larger in the sensors, its defenses rallying. 12 hours felt like an eternity with the swarm closing in once more. Elena gripped the helm, eyes fixed on the stars. They weren't out yet, but humanity's walk away had just begun, carrying lessons the galaxy wouldn't soon forget. The dim hum of the auxiliary engines vibrated through the deck plating, a constant reminder that the Endeavor was running on fumes. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrests of her command chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from fear, never from fear, but from the stifling heat of the failing life support. Around her, the bridge crew moved like shadows, their faces illuminated by the flickering holoscreens displaying the encroaching Vexery armada. Status on the warp coils, Mira? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. The engineer, Mira Chin, wiped grease from her brow with the back of her hand, her dark eyes sharp as she patched into the console. Holding at 30%, Cap. But if we push for another jump, we're looking at a cascade failure. The Vexery jammers are frying the relays faster than I can reroute. Across from them, Kaler, the crystalline-skinned ambassador from the Lyrian Enclave, shifted uneasily. His facets caught the red emergency lights, scattering them like fractured stars. This retreat dishonors the pact, he murmured, his voice a melodic chime edged with caution. The council demanded we hold the line at Epsilon Verge. Elena shot him a glance, her lips curling into a wry smile. Honor won't shield us from plasma torpedoes, Ambassador. We're buying time, not writing epics. She turned back to the main viewer, where the Vexery dreadnoughts loomed like jagged obsidian monoliths, their hulls pulsing with the eerie blue of containment fields. The fleet had ambushed them mid-negotiation, turning what should have been a diplomatic summit into a slaughter. 3 human outposts gone in hours, their signals silenced forever. The witty chirp of the ship's AI jacks cut through the tension. Incoming hail from the Vexery flagship. Shall I play it, or just tell them to shove their ultimatums where their warp drives don't shine? Patch it through, Elena said, straightening. The screen flickered, resolving into the snarling visage of Admiral Zorith, his tentacles writhing in what passed for vexury agitation. "Human," he hissed, his translated voice dripping with venom, "your primitives flee like vermin. Surrender the colony codes or we glass Epsilon from orbit." Elena's jaw tightened. She leaned forward, her brave facade cracking just enough to show the fire beneath. "We've walked away from worse deals than yours, Admiral. Your empire's built on fear, ours on something stickier. Like ingenuity." She cut the line before he could retort, nodding to Mira. "Initiate the decoy protocol. Let's see if they bite." Myra's fingers flew across the controls, launching a swarm of holographic drones that mimicked the Endeavor's signature. The vexury ships veered, their weapons charging toward the ghosts. For a heartbeat, relief washed over the bridge. Kaler exhaled, his crystals dimming slightly. "Clever. But they will adapt." As if summoned, alarms blared. The decoys shattered under concentrated fire, and the real dreadnoughts adjusted course, closing the gap with predatory grace. "They're on to us," Jax announced, his avatar glitching in mock surprise. "Warp window closing in 2 minutes. Recommend evasive maneuvers, unless you fancy becoming space dust." Elena stood, pacing the narrow confines. The plan had backfired spectacularly. The vexury sensor tech pierced the illusion too quickly, leaving them exposed. Resource shortage hit hard now. Their power reserves dipped critically, lights flickering as non-essentials shut down. A real cost. Without the colony's relays, they'd be adrift in the void, easy pickings. "Options?" she demanded, eyes locking on Mira. The engineer hesitated, then pulled up schematics. "We overload the forward shields, channel the energy into a feedback pulse. It'll scramble their jammers long enough for a micro-jump. But it'll fry our NAV systems. We could end up anywhere, hostile space, black hole fringe." Kaler's facets flared. "Risky. The Lyrian Council will see it as abandonment." "Better abandoned than atomized," Elena snapped, her caution yielding to grit. She clapped Mira on the shoulder, the camaraderie a spark in the gloom. "Do it. Jax, plot the safest, anywhere you can." As Mira worked, the ship shuddered under incoming fire. A glancing hit rocked the bridge, sparks flying from a console. Elena braced, heart pounding, the weight of the crew's lives pressing down. The vexury were closing, their laws of power, dominate or die, unyielding. But humans? They walked away, rewriting the rules with every desperate twist. The pulse fired, a brilliant arc of energy lancing out. Vexury sensors lit up in chaos, their formation fracturing. The Endeavor lurched into warp, the stars streaking into oblivion. But as the jump stabilized, Jax's voice returned, laced with unease. "Captain, we're not alone in this sector. Sensors picking up signatures, familiar ones. The Council's enforcers. They think we've defected." Elena's breath caught. The adaptation had worked, but the consequence lingered like smoke. Trust shattered, a new rival in the dark. The chamber's hum faded to a whisper as Alara sealed the final conduit, her hands slick with coolant residue. The alien core pulsed erratically before her, its crystalline facets fracturing light into jagged rainbows across the walls. Jax crouched nearby, his toolkit splayed open like a surgeon's tray, while Mira scanned the readouts from the makeshift console they jury-rigged from scavenged drone parts. "It's holding," Mira said, her voice steady but laced with the fatigue of 3 sleepless cycles. "But the cascade's building. We buy 10 minutes, tops." Jax wiped sweat from his brow, glancing at Alara. "Your call. We vent it now or ride the wave." Alara's fingers hovered over the override. Brave didn't mean reckless, not after the losses. The rival clan's sabotage had cost them the outpost, the storm had claimed their shuttle, and now this. A failing power nexus that could wipe the sector clean if it overloaded. But walking away wasn't an option, not with the refugees huddled in the lower bays, counting on them. She nodded. "Ride it. Link the stabilizers." They moved as one, a rhythm born of grit and shared scars. Jax fed auxiliary power from the human-engineered capacitors, simple, robust things that laughed at the aliens' finicky quantum fields. Mira adjusted the dampeners, her witty barbs silenced by focus, while Alara wove the final protocol, A clever bypass turning the core's own feedback loop against the surge. The Nexus shuddered, lights flickering like a dying star. Alarms wailed, but Ilara's hand stayed firm. Steady. It's ours now. A low groan echoed through the hull as the overload crested, then broke. The core stabilized, its pulse evening to a calm thrum. Silence followed, broken only by their ragged breaths. Mira slumped against the console, a half-smile cracking her face. We just tamed a galactic relic with pocket tech and spite. Tell me that's not human. Jax chuckled, clapping Ilara's shoulder. Damn right. But look. On the viewport, the rival fleet hung in the void, their weapons cold. Word of the Nexus's survival would spread. Humans didn't conquer. They adapted, endured. The clans would hesitate now, rethinking their siege. Ilara stared into the stars, the weight of it settling. They'd saved the outpost, but the storm's scars lingered. Comms fractured, supplies thin. Power walked with them, yes, but so did the cost, a reminder etched in every repaired weld. As the first supply drone blinked into view, heralding aid from the core worlds, Ilara turned to her crew. We walk on. Together. The chamber's light steadied, casting long shadows that promised more trials ahead.